Yes, I broke both my arms.
Both of them.
I know. In Rockford.
Almost gotta be trying to.
All you see is usually on TV now.
So, locking the.
That was so funny when I saw that. I started laughing.
Yep.
You don't mean nothing.
That's nothing. That poor lady broke both arms. That just
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Clem and Monroe aren't here. Two next to you aren't here.
better have a real good husband.
Good evening. Evelyn, would you please give the invocation this evening?
I'm saying you better have a real good husband.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bow our heads. Father God, we come before you tonight on behalf of our great city of Freeport. Father, we're here tonight to give thanks to you that this city is under your authority. We hold up in prayer before you every man and woman who is in authority, positions of authority in our city council. We pray that every decision is made on behalf of all the people and that your Holy Spirit rests upon all the council members to pass the right ordinances and resolutions, that all will be fair, that everything will be done decently and in order. Father, thank you for all the council members and others in this city that are aware that there has to be healing and forgiveness to take place in our city, so there will be peace in our city. We thank you that the upright in heart will always sit on the city council of Freeport. These things we ask in the mighty and matchless name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Amen.
Thank you, Evelyn. So now we'll officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderperson Clem is absent, as is Monroe. Simmons.
Walking in right now.
Monroe just walked in.
Simmons just here. Parker.
Here.
Stacy.
Present.
Shadle.
Here.
Sanders is absent. Sellers.
Here.
And Alderperson Monroe.
Here.
If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman Simmons.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alderman Simmons, the meeting's yours.
Can you speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Parker, approved or seconded by Sellers. Do we vote?
Yes, and you will ask all in favor,
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any
and then ask for opposed as well to give them a chance.
Any opposed? All righty, thank you. We'll move on. Motion passes 5-0. It's 5 of us?
6.
6-0. And do I have a motion for the approval of minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting held on December 11th, 2023? Yes.
So moved.
Oh, Ms. Stacy?
I have a question pertaining.
Let's finish the motion first, and then you can ask.
Yep, so for procedure, you need a motion first, second, and then discussion.
We got a motion from Monroe, seconded from Parker or Sellers.
Yep, Sellers did it. That's fine. Doesn't matter.
Now
Okay,
discussion, Ms. Stacy.
I just had a question for clarity on a couple statements that were made at the last COW meeting. Councilman Monroe, you spoke about Missouri, you spoke about Minnesota, and that you see Ferguson happening here in Freeport. Could you be a little more clear on what that statement really meant?
Yet. I mean, I don't know if I can.
So usually the minutes, you're looking to see if the minutes reflect, the general discussion there, so, is what's written on paper generally reflect the discussion. So it's not supposed to be a verbatim, transcript of what was said there. So if you think something that was incorrectly stated on this sheet of paper, these minutes, then there, but it's not necessarily a time to have him like rehash his entire, whatever his point was, I guess.
That's why I asked I wanted to understand what was being said.
And so I guess, is there a particular sentence here in these minutes that you're asking for clarification on?
It was said on tape. It was not said on the minutes, but it was a comment that was made. And that's why before we even voted, I wanted clarity before even saying, accept the minutes.
Madam Clerk?
There, as Attorney Zito said, it's not verbatim, so there's much that is said that does not get reflected in the minutes. The minimum that's required is the motion, the second, and the vote. And also, some part of the presentation or what we're talking about will be in there, but beyond that, I don't get real deep in the weeds on who said what.
Okay, but it still needs clarity.
Not if it's not in the minutes under this agenda item.
I think certainly if you have like a question that you want to know from Alderman Rowe, what, the context was of his statement, or what his statement is, or what his beliefs are, or whatever, that you can have that conversation with him to find out, provide you with clarity, but not that it's necessarily going to be reflected into the minutes.
Okay, so I can or can't have that conversation?
You can have them there, but I think that would be in a conversation that's more appropriate outside of open session, because what's on the floor right now is the minutes. We're approving the minutes.
But what was said was not said outside. What was said on the council floor.
Correct. But the clerk then prepared her minutes of that meeting, which are not a verbatim record. So I guess my point is, the minutes are a limited area. If you have a question about Alderman Monroe's statements, I think that would be more appropriate to ask him outside of the meeting, as opposed to right now what's before you is approval of these minutes as presented in front of you. Now, if you think that there's a typo or a correction as to what the clerk has typed.
No,
Here.
I don't think it's a typo. I'm just saying, if it was good enough to be said openly at the last COW meeting, which was a jab or a stab, then it should be able to be clarified so that no one has the opportunity to get it twisted, not that one would.
I suppose certainly if there's, minutes can be amended to add statements in there. If there's a motion made to say something that Alderman wants a particular statement added into the minutes, that motion can be made, seconded, and if it's approved, then that statement can be added into the minutes.
Can I jump in here? So it sounds like she just wants Mr. Monroe to clarify his statement and ask him publicly, because he made the statement publicly, and he may want to clarify it publicly so that if anyone else misunderstood, he can correct that. At what point in the meeting does she ask that and not be out of order?
Well, you got to remember that if the clerk wrote every word for word, she'd be doing nothing but that. So
That's
it's
not
not
what she's
unusual that she just sticks with what the clerk's, how that normally is done. So
Ms. Stacy, am I correct you're not asking the clerk to amend the meeting, minutes, correct?
Correct.
You want clarification from Mr. Monroe of what he meant.
Yes.
At what point does she ask him that so he has the opportunity to do that in this meeting publicly and not be out of order?
That's a good question. I mean, because we don't have council announcements on this agenda because this is a cow meeting. I suppose if it wanted to be done during public comment on non-agenda items, it could be done there.
So not at this point when we're discussing the previous Cal meeting?
Or the approval of the minutes, right? Because the item that you're on right now is just approval of the minutes that are written. So I suppose it could happen during number 13.
Would you like to add yourself for public comments? However, public comments, we don't respond, correct?
Not usually, no.
Well, you had the floor. You asked the question, so it's already been asked.
I'll have it put on the agenda at the next meeting. And then it can be discussed.
That'll work.
Okay, thank you, Alderperson Stacy. We already have a motion from Monroe, a second from Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Do we have, I don't have the list.
There's none signed up for,
No public comments for tonight?
that's okay. I got it.
Okay, we are moving on to agenda item number 7, which is a presentation, or quarterly presentation from the Greater Freeport Partnership given by Andrea Schultz-Winter, the Executive Director.
Good evening, and just shortly I will have Nicole Haas and Bill Clow up here to accompany me. Thank you. All right, I'm going to try to not hit the screen or the buttons too many times. I heard this is going to be a little laggy, but bear with me here. Since our last quarterly presentation, we've had a leadership change. I transitioned from development director to interim executive director and assumed the position of executive director November 1st. Additionally, in the partnership staff, we said goodbye to Jenna Fitzgerald, our administrative services manager. However, we were fortunate that Tess Dahm, our former director of administrative services, came out of retirement and is with us in a part-time capacity to fill the necessary duties until a permanent replacement is hired. Those are some internal updates. Moving on. You've seen this image in previous presentations and will continue to see so in future presentations. This is the grounding image that references the holistic nature of our work around economic development. Everything we do supports economic development, and tonight we will share a brief presentation highlighting our work from the fourth quarter and what's ahead in 2024. Staff attended and promoted the awards ceremony hosted by Illinois Main Street and Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stranton. In our second year as an Illinois Main Street community, the partnership entered and received recognition for design concept for Chicago Avenue Streetscape project. Volunteer of the Year was awarded to Devin Milkey, and Board Member of the Year was recognizing Josh Elliott. Freeport is the only community in Illinois to receive multiple awards this evening. And I want to note that the volunteer and the board member awards were the only two recognized in the state, so this was quite an honor. This is a great example of a public-private partnership and collaboration. The city strategically leveraged grants and in-house expertise to make a significant capital investment that created a vision for a reimagined downtown. During construction, the partnership acted as a conduit of communication between city, construction crews, business owners, and general public to provide updated information about road closures, parking, pedestrian access to lessen the impact on downtown businesses. Speaking to volunteers, being a public-private partnership, we leverage volunteers to expand our capacity, staff events, clean up, distribute communication, and champion our collective work. In an age where everyone is time poor, we are honored that residents and business owners volunteer their time with us and are thankful we're given the opportunity for them to be recognized. Relating to business attraction efforts, in the last 90 days, we received 12 requests for information from Intersect Illinois, which is the state's marketing and business attraction arm. We were able to respond to and submit proposals to 4 opportunities. Each company looking to make an investment has specific criteria regarding land, location, utilities, workforce, and existing vacant space that must be met in order to submit a response for evaluation. Recently, the majority of RFIs, or requests for information, are stemming from electric vehicle or alternative energy sector. We continue to build relationships with landowners and developers on potential developable sites. In the last 90 days, we met with 2 property owners and toured their sites and discussed potential development. In the last 90 days, we worked with 2 investor groups to bring new restaurants, to downtown, or to Freeport. Beefaroo, as we've already discussed in other city council meetings. We've worked with them on Enterprise Zone and facilitating conversation with Community Development Department, and Olivo Taco, which is now going to be downtown where Beef 312 is on, right on Galena. They've just opened within the last couple weeks. The partnership continues to serve, And in regards to business retention, retaining our existing businesses, we invited local businesses to meet with the Canadian consulate, hosted by Representative Cabello's office, to connect area businesses to foreign investment and business opportunities. We had 2 local businesses attend. The partnership serves as an administrator for the Northwest Illinois Enterprise Zone, and due to that administrative work, we helped a business relocate out of the floodplain but remain local. Additionally, we connected an HR manager of a local manufacturer to the Workforce Connections apprenticeship program so that company can receive assistance and develop an apprenticeship program that meets their exact needs and specifications. Regarding business expansion, we assisted 2 women-owned businesses with their process to expand, move out of their current location, and purchase buildings downtown. We helped answer questions about Enterprise Zone, contacts to local builders, and the city's process for development. Over the last several months, we've been working with a food manufacturer who plans a phased investment and expansion over the next several years. We are connecting their team to state incentive programs, local and regional workforce programs, and contacts, as well as exploring innovative ideas to deal with their waste streams. Full disclosure, this manufacturer is in rural Stevenson County, but it has a great impact on Freeport and the rest of Stevenson County, as many of their workers live in Freeport. I'm now going to turn it over to Bill Clow to talk about business and entrepreneurial support.
Hello, good evening. We do a lot of work with businesses and entrepreneurs, but we want to highlight a few of the things that we worked on in the fourth quarter. A couple of these are overlapping into this quarter. We've worked with, in the fourth quarter of 23, we worked with 9 entrepreneurs, including 2 minority startups. We also worked a lot to get the word out about the B2B New Biz Grant. That was a grant that had a very narrow focus for businesses that were started in 2020 and 2021 and met a number of other criteria. We worked to promote that. We counseled 10 businesses, and we heard just today that one of those was awarded $10,000. So that's not bad. We also started working on our base camp, which is our entrepreneurial school that we'll be kicking off at the end of, on January 30th. Be 5 classes and geared towards helping small businesses and entrepreneurs learn some of the different aspects they need to help them be successful in their business. But also, we're using local people to do the instruction, so they're making those connections and meeting those people that can help them beyond the class. We started working and promoting Base Camp in the fourth quarter. Right now we have 6 people who have signed up, and a number of others who have received scholarships through a grant that we got, and we expect them to sign up too. So we're looking forward to a good class. So we'll look forward, and I'll turn it over to Nicole Haas.
Good evening. Just to touch on a few things that we have talked about over time. First, the tourism impact on Stevenson County. Now that we have completed 2023, we have some apples to apples comparison from the previous 2 years now, 22 and 23. So the off-season, so we call the non-tourism season, tourism season usually expands May through October. And in those months, you'll see that we surpass 2022 margins in most of those months. In the off-season, so the earlier spring and the later in the fall, we are at or we're below 2022 levels. I am still crunching data, but find that a lot of that has to do with business travel, people from out of the area doing construction work, things like that, that we did not see in 23 compared to 22. However, once the finance office comes up with hotel motel tax revenue, we might not see a decline in the overall hotel motel tax. Without going too much into the weeds, the people who are here on construction jobs or other corporate jobs receive a lower rate for their room than we do when we come on the weekend for tourist activities and things like that. So while occupancy may show that it is down, that does not mean that overall revenue is down, because we could see a higher revenue in the visitor portion of that. In the fourth quarter, it was all about promoting increased sales for our local businesses. So 2 really big events that helped that downtown were Wine and Witches on October 12th. We had more than 20 participating businesses on really a not fantastic weather night, and we still had over 250 people that came and collected cups for tastings and were downtown, and the stores, from the response, from what we've gotten from survey data, all really appreciated that additional boost in their sales for the month of October. Mistletoe Walk was also a weekend-long event. It started Friday night with a hot cocoa stroll of 16 participating businesses, and then Saturday there was a horse-drawn carriage, carolers and singers in multiple venues, and then the hero tree was lit at a nighttime ceremony, 5 p.m. in front of the Stevenson County Courthouse. And then a lot of the downtown businesses stayed open again for extended hours on Sundays, which is not a usual program for them either, to continue to see the sales. And as reported, all 3 days had exceeded what they would see in a normal November weekend. Quality of life events, so I separated these out based on the goal of why we bring people in for an event. Shopping events, we want to see people spending money. It's really about the increased sales and increased revenue for not only the businesses, but in sales tax as well. Quality of life events aren't that. They are just really meant to be fun so that the people who live here and around the area see what we are doing to make it a great place to live. And Beautiful Saturday was another great example of that, with people trick-or-treating throughout the downtown area. Other promotions, we had a great local shopping campaign that was really extended and expanded because of a community grant through the Foundation for Northwest Illinois. They were able to provide us with some extra funds, so that meant more billboards, more radio, more social media advertising to continue to push the fact that downtown Freeport and Stevenson County in general are a really great place to spend your money during the holidays. That was also seen through our Partnership Cash program, through an incentive through that same grant. If you purchased $100 in Partnership Cash, we gave you an additional $20 on that, and we were able to infuse nearly $6,000 of additional spending that we know will stay here locally. And finally, continuing to promote the entertainment opportunities while people have additional family or friends or other people in town for the holidays through our weekly event guide. Looking ahead into 2024, so we're kind of transitioning now from what was in 2023 and fourth quarter into what we look forward to in the first quarter of 2024. First, we've been working with a really fantastic group of engaged community members on developing an inclusion statement that will direct all efforts for the partnership, not only in 2024, but going forward. We actually met with this group as recently as today and have finalized those statements, and the board will take a look at adopting those at our January meeting. It will inform our work and help us discuss important diversity issues in all facets of what we do on a day-to-day basis in our programs, in our events, and how we approach marketing each of those. The partnership is also engaging in a strategic planning session in probably later Q1 at this point, reimagining our work because we have evolved as an organization. How we started 5 years ago is not what our community needs right now, and developing a plan and strategy and a work plan going forward through that mission and vision statement. And as we have through every facet of our work, continuing to keep in mind the city's established and stated mission and vision and goals that you guys have recently adopted in 2023 as well, to make sure that when those efforts can be in sync, they are, and they're stated accordingly.
What can you expect to see from us between our quarterly presentations? Well, I hope you all know that all city council members are also partnership members, and you should be receiving a business-to-business newsletter, a weekly event guide that comes out on Thursday that talks about all the happenings in Freeport and Stevenson County. Our monthly board reports are included in your monthly packet. New in 2022 will be a monthly marketing message. We will be distributing a monthly marketing message, providing you with information so that you can help spread the word to your constituents and partners. At the beginning of each month, you will receive an email that includes attachments with all types of media information to print, upload, and display at your business or your organizations. Examples of what will be sent to you are monthly calendar of community events, editorial blog of things to do in the county, posters for events and educational programs, graphics, videos to share on your video screens, and more. We will be giving a quarterly presentation just as we are this evening, and direct outreach. I welcome and I would like to connect with each one of you so that you can have the opportunity to answer questions of the partnership in a more informal setting, as well as we can help understand what your goals are and why you wanted to be an elected official. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and I think we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angela. I just have one question. I know you talked about the $355 million and the $200 million with that opportunity, and it's just supposed to bring 200 to 300 jobs. What is your process to move these conversations so that we can get that type of work and those type of?
And you're referring to our quarterly report into one of the tables?
Yes, I guess you're talking about the investment of the 300.
That's coming through an Intersect Illinois RFI. And so what we do is we put together a packet of information to respond and talk about each company, depending on what they do. Thank you. Each company, depending on what their business is, might have specific utility or workforce training needs, or access to highway transportation, et cetera. So we put together a packet of information that can directly answer those questions. We often talk about the affordability of our utilities here in Northwest Illinois. Abundance of water is something that makes us competitively, it's a competitive advantage. So we put together that information and we send that into Intersect Illinois. We follow up to make sure that we've answered all their questions. And if they come back to us with follow-up questions or they want more detail, that's a good sign. It means they're taking a second look. So just last week, I was able to submit more information to one of those prospects because they are taking a closer look.
I noticed that that has been on a lot of the presentations before.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering, how long is something like that going to take? You know, I know we talk a lot about, you know, downtown and downtown development, but I think a lot of people are looking for more stable jobs that are able to get people where they're able to have a retirement or they're able to have insurance or things like that. So that's the thing that I'm really, my eye is more on and my heart is more on seeing jobs come in to help people to be able to buy a home. You know, because right now our rental is 47%. So I just think that if people had more stability and our community was more stable, I mean, I could see that because I'm hearing a lot about downtown and, you know, the different things downtown. That's great, but I also would like to hear more about stable jobs that will bring people stable homes.
That's a great question, and I think that we too want to see more primary employers or large employers move into the area. So with these projects, I would love to say that we try to be as responsive as we possibly can. That's what we have. We're capable of being in charge of our own behavior, right? And so I follow up as quickly as possible to give them the information they need. Unfortunately, some of these projects can drag on quite a long time, and Intersect Illinois does gather information from them and reports back to us if a project is lost. Now, if a project is lost, meaning they're not looking at Freeport, they're not looking at Illinois at all, and that could be for issues that are way beyond our control. The company decided to relocate elsewhere. Another state offered a more competitive package, incentive package. So sometimes these things can move as quick as 6 months. Sometimes they can drag on for 5 years. And I would also say that's why we track them in terms of this table, which I know is kind of a little bit hard to decipher, but we track that because we want to continue, unless we hear that the project is dead and that the company has moved on, we consider it still a live project. We still touch base with them on a frequent basis to understand, is there any more information? Has anything changed? You know, until they tell us no, we're going to continue to treat that as an opportunity.
Other person, Stacy.
Who are the 9 entrepreneurs you work with?
I am not going to stand up here, and we cannot tell you their names unless they would like us to do so. I can tell you some of the businesses of the people that I have met with, and Bill can probably fill in the gaps. Both him and I kind of intercept these people as they make appointments or they stop in the office. One is they're a local a two-person company that's looking to start to do painting and home repairs. They're both handy, and they would like to expand their businesses. We often interface with a lot of food entrepreneurs. They might have cottage-based businesses, and they're looking to either, if there's a commercial kitchen, or looking what steps they need to put in place to expand. Bill, is there any?
I think, and a couple of them are people that are just, they know they want to start a business, but they're looking for information to help them to make a decision. So sometimes we send them to the library where it has a lot of resources, or sometimes we connect them with other resources like the Small Business Development Center. So it's a variety of things, from people that have a business that are looking to move into the area or expand that business, to people that are just have that entrepreneurial urge and they want help kind of making sure they get a good start.
I would say we often find people who, the people who visit us most frequently are at the beginning of their business startup journey. They seldom have a refined business plan. That's why we're putting together Base Camp and the kind of a community business academy, because we're seeing that is a service that's really needed in the community to give them a strong foundation, to help them really understand the thought and the preparation that needs to go into starting your own business.
Are there any case studies or success stories you can share with the council?
I think one of the things I would like to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you?
just any success stories or any case studies that will show the council, you know, basically what you're doing and if what you're doing is working and who do it entail?
I think one of the success stories that I probably most presence of mind is that we had worked with a small business that qualified for the B2B small business grant, the new biz grant that's going to close January 11th, but that's active right now. This was targeted, and Bill spoke to the fact that it was a narrow focus. It was for businesses that started in 2020 and 2021. They had previously been excluded from previous grant fund rounds. And getting the text message from the business owner saying that they got $10,000 was a huge success. That was partially, we helped them apply, we answered questions. That's the support we provide, and we help make sure people know about those opportunities so they can take advantage of them. I would also say having 2 businesses in downtown, and I know this is downtown focused. I mean, it's not where we focus all of our attention, but these examples are. But having 2 businesses that have grown so much that they're needing to purchase 2 new buildings, so 2 separate buildings, well, they're new to them. They're existing buildings, excuse me. But they were purchasing those buildings to expand their businesses. I think it's also a great sign that those businesses and those buildings will retain local ownership. Those people are here local, they're gonna maintain that building, they're gonna take care of that building in downtown, and that's wonderful to see.
So specifically, what did GFP do to expand those businesses?
A lot of counseling in terms of answering questions, looking at their business plan, helping answer questions about an enterprise zone, how they can take advantage of the enterprise zone because the buildings that they're looking at are in the enterprise zone, how that will be a benefit when they go to do some remodeling, who they need to talk to at the city in terms of what's the process for getting a building permit, who might be a local builder that they could work with. We have a list of local contractors that we referred them to. Helping them who to contact at Community Development Department, the process that they would need to go through. I think a lot of the times we get people who come in our door and they just don't know what the next step is. We're able to sit with them, answer their question. A small business owner is often in a very vulnerable setting, and it's hard. They go through a lot of trials, and I think we provide the service of hearing them out, helping them understand what their issues are, and here are some possible solutions to help them solve their problems and continue on their business or expand.
So on the base camp, who teaches these classes for the base camp?
Sure, so each class will have a different focus and topic area, and as Bill mentioned, it's really important for us to also connect these local entrepreneurs with local resources. So we're tapping our own local network of attorneys, insurance agents, our local permitting agents, so the community development department, as well as the health department. Bill, help me out. What else is in there? Marketing, local marketing expertise.
Marketing expertise, financial resources. So we're trying to get them a variety of exposure to a variety of resources that can, hit a number of the issues. But let's take financial, for example. We have a local bank that's going to, some of their representatives are going to be coming and talking. We also have Nate Jordan from the SBDC in Rockford coming and talking about some other types of resources for financial resources other than going to a bank and getting a traditional loan. And then we have Matt Simpson from OMI, the Office of Minority Employment Enrichment, to talk about venture capital. He happens to have a venture capital business on his own, and talking about some of the services that they can provide to small businesses. So we try and provide a variety of resources to them in each of those 5 classes.
And try to keep those resources here local so that when the class is done, obviously the services we provide to them aren't going to be concluded, but that they are familiar with other service providers. They already know a name and a face in the community.
Alderperson Sellers?
Out of the grants, I know you said you guys have been doing this for 5 years, and it's changed and it's grown.
Right.
Out of that, how many businesses or grants that you guys applied for, how many businesses fall under the minority and women-owned businesses? How many
grants? Well, we have not awarded
they
any
have,
grants.
they have applied for? You have helped them or
Oh, okay.
showed them direction to grants? Is that what you? also
Right,
do?
and what I'm going to ask is if I could follow up and give you exact data on that, because there's been about 4 or 5 rounds of those, and so we do have data, but off the top of my head, I don't have an exact number. So I know that the previous one was focused on arts-based businesses, restaurants, and hotels, and I know at least a handful of those were minority-owned, but I'm not going to stand up here and quote a number. I can get back to you and get you that information.
Alderperson Monroe.
Thank you. So you said you had 12 requests, 4 responses.
Correct.
Is there a reason why we only got back to 4?
Any requests for information that we have a building of the correct or close to the amount of size that a company might need, we have enough acreage or acreage that could be assembled, I send a response. There are some that are just looking at 100-acre sites, much larger, or buildings that don't meet any of the specifications of buildings that require certain things that we don't have in vacant buildings here currently. Yeah. Believe me, I try to look and like, if we can make a case, I'll submit a response.
So I guess the question, a kind of follow-up question, is what was shared with the city manager on, the ones that we couldn't respond to, the things that we need to attract those types of businesses?
Well, I think Manager Boyer and I have sat down, and a lot of it is looking at assembling larger sites for some of those. Existing buildings, we would need to look with existing buildings. We're kind of stuck with the existing buildings we have, unless we start having conversations with a developer and looking at putting together spec buildings that would meet certain specifications. The existing buildings we have that are vacant, we do have a number of them, but they kind of have what they have. Not to say that a building or a company wouldn't put money in to do some adaptation. Again, if it's close to their specifications, I will try to submit a response.
Okay, awesome. And follow up. As far as the base camp, are we working with those 6 people to kind of guide them through the Small Business Administration loan process, things like that, to help them get additional dollars? So, when they
That is definitely, sorry. That is definitely going to be a key focus on one of the presentations.
Awesome.
There's 5 different classes. Each class will cover a different subject area. Well, there's one evening that's completely around finance. So we do have a lot of local lenders who work with SBA financing. Yeah.
That's great.
We also will leave them, we'll continue to work with them as much as they want after the class or during the class in addition. So the classes are part of it, but part of it is building a cohort and developing resources for them. And we'll learn from them as much as they'll learn from us as far as what they need, and then we'll make some adjustments.
Right, great. And what kind of steps have we done to make sure that existing businesses, are we meeting with CEOs and presidents of companies to make sure that we are providing any necessary information they need to expand or grow? Or
Sure. So we had a couple meetings, not as many as I would like in the 4th quarter, I'll be honest with you, but we met with a handful of primary employers, and I would say those are often our partnership level members, to have those conversations. I wanted to introduce myself as new leadership, make sure they had a full understanding of the partnership and the things that we do, and also understand, what are their pinch points. Looking into 2024, I look at those as business retention visits or BRE visits.
Right.
And yes, really targeting that. We can't help address their problems if we don't know what they are. So it's really sitting down and having those conversations.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
One more question.
Alderperson Sellers.
For the jobs that you said were created within the enterprise zone?
Yes.
What types of jobs are they? Are they jobs that, can you give me maybe not today,
Sure.
but like a breakdown? Are they administrative jobs, executive jobs, business jobs, jobs where they take some type of training or some type of leadership, or they pay pretty good?
Yeah, I would say it's a mix. So part of the state's reporting requirements on enterprise zone, they have to tell us to get the benefit. They have to tell us how many jobs are retained or created. And so that's where that number is created in terms of the 77. So that's part of their self-reporting. They are not obligated to give me a breakdown of what those jobs are. But knowing some of the businesses that did apply, we're talking about a financial institution. So I think you have everything from front desk teller to CEO, you know, everything that you would have the gamut. I'm thinking off the top of my head, many of the businesses that applied, they were around doing a modification or improvement to their building. They weren't necessarily adding on square footage, but they were able to utilize the enterprise zone. So they were looking at retaining the existing employers and maybe employees and adding on a couple of handful of staff. They didn't tell me exactly what the positions were, but many of these are mid-range employers in terms of company size.
How many businesses are we speaking of?
That received the enterprise zone benefit, or that applied for in Freeport, that was 3 commercial projects. So that was 3 separate businesses in the last quarter.
How many jobs are these businesses bringing to the Freeport area?
So they either created or retained 77 positions.
Is this in the 5 years? How long is?
This is in the last quarter. Yeah, so compiled in our annual report, we'll have a summation of 2023. If you're ever interested, our zone was created, our new zone was recertified, if you will, in 2020. So I have data from 2020 moving forward.
Okay.
All righty, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on to, we have a proclamation for National Day of Racial Healing on January 13th. This will be presented by Mayor Miller.
Thank you. Ms. Baker, would you like to join me? And if any of the other ladies are a part of your group, you're welcome as well. No? Thank you, Ms. Baker, for coming.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make the following proclamation. Whereas the City of Freeport affirms that all people, regardless of their racial, ethnic, and religious group identification, skin color, or physical traits, deserve an equal opportunity to experience well-being in a just society and be full participants in our democracy, acknowledging that we must work to address historic and present-day harms of racism, heal the wounds created by racism, ethnic and religious bias, and build communities where all children can reach their full potential and thrive. And whereas all children have the right to safety, dignity, and humanity, and must be provided equal opportunity to grow, learn, and flourish in a nurturing environment. And whereas every individual possesses the ability to learn, grow, and change, and build communities of accountability, care, and collective actions. And whereas if we all dedicate ourselves to a process that brings individuals and communities to wholeness, repairs the damage caused by racism, and transforms societal structures into one that affirms the inherent value of all people, bringing about the necessary changes in thinking and behavior that will propel this great country forward as a society where everyone belongs. And whereas racial healing is a vital and crucial commitment to the educational, social, mental, and overall well-being of all. And whereas the City of Freeport, in conjunction with others throughout the United States of America and across the globe, acknowledges the National Day of Racial Healing and urges all citizens to promote racial healing and transformation individually and collectively as a means of working together to ensure the best quality of life for everyone. Now, therefore, I, Jody Miller, Mayor of the City of Freeport, do hereby proclaim this city honors and recognizes January 13th, 2024, the Saturday before Martin Luther King Jr. Day, as the official day of racial healing in Freeport. The public is invited to attend the Day of Racial Healing event on Saturday, January 13th, from 9:30 till 1:30 at the Freeport Public Library, organized by the NAACP Freeport Branch with other community organizations. So, Ms. Baker, thank you very much for coming, and if you had a few words you wanted to share.
I will, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. On behalf of our local branch president, Patricia Norman, and the local branch, we would like to say thank you so very much for recognizing this opportunity, taking time to acknowledge this national event. We are all aware of just the terrible things that have gone on in our country as well as locally, and I heard it earlier in tonight's meeting. It is time to heal. It's time to heal. And this is the opportunity for people to come together for the healing. It is so much needed, and I thank you for this opportunity and this acknowledgement. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Baker. Now we're moving on to item 9, discussion regarding an ordinance amending chapter 806 regarding BYOB establishments. This will be presented by City Manager Rob Boyer, and we will have a presentation from Mr. Tim Mahoney. Are you going first, Rob?
Thank you, Madam. The city currently has a separate liquor license classification for bring your own beer liquor establishments. The Liquor Commission has noted that the adoption of the BYOB format by past and prospective applicants has not met the initial expectation of the council in enacting the BYOB classification, and may potentially result in the creation of an unfair competition landscape with licensed liquor retailers. The changes proposed here are intended to address these concerns while continuing to allow the existence of these entities. The BYOB establishments are not licensed by the State of Illinois Liquor Commission, since they do not sell liquor at retail. Such, without local regulations, an establishment could allow BYOB at any time, so long as they were not a licensed retailer. The city has addressed these concerns by creating a meeting hall classification for places where persons are encouraged to gather, and prohibits alcohol liquor on these premises unless they are licensed by a BYOB establishment. This allows the city to ensure that the health and safety codes are observed, and ensures that the law enforcement has equal access to these premises as they would traditional tavern or liquor store. As implemented, BYOB establishments have been seen to operate in ways which essentially compete with licensed retail establishments, which have higher compliance obligations, operational costs, and license costs. In order to avoid unfairly favoring one class of licensee over another, the Liquor Commission believes it is necessary to, 1, limit the number of events where BYOB is allowed, and 2, treating the license cost as if the license were a Tier 2 license. While the existing BYOB license is terminated at the expiration of the current term, requiring a payment of a new initial fee, it is proposed that the license holder of the current license structure be given a credit for their initial fee towards the new higher fee. This approach strikes a balance between prohibiting BYOB establishments altogether and the current low bar for these establishments. At the regular meeting of the Liquor Commission on December 14, 2023, the attached revisions to Chapter 806 approved for presentation to the City Council by unanimous vote. Financial considerations: the proposed rules and fee structures are intended to be cost and revenue positive as there is an increase in license fee. On recommendation, I am recommending the City Council adopt the attached ordinance or move it to second reading at least tonight.
Evening, everybody. Good to see you all again. Happy New Year, happy holidays. I'm here to talk to you about the Festival District. So several years ago, we came
Actually, can you just stick with the BYOB first?
Well, happy to answer questions with that. That was also kind of presented, so.
Yeah, the festival is the next item, that's
All
why.
right. I was told I was doing festival, but I'm happy to adapt. Go ahead. I didn't know if you had a question. Sorry, you had your hand up. So any questions on the BYOB? Essentially, this is level the playing field kind of thing. And that's been the idea from this administration, since our mayor got elected. That's been the idea since I got on the new liquor commission that went through and revamped our entire liquor code. And the BYOB was a good idea, we thought, but in practicality, it hasn't worked out. What it's being used for is for somebody to open up an establishment and essentially try to operate it like a bar when it's not a bar, and they don't go through all the same regulations and restrictions, BAID, cameras, all of that stuff. So, you know, we like to have the approach of let's give it a shot and see how it works, and we gave this one a shot and we feel it hasn't worked. So we want to change how it's supposed to be used. You know, BYOB is supposed to be for your kid's graduation, and things like that. It's not supposed to be, I'm going to rent out a hall and hold a party every weekend, which is kind of what's happening. So that's why we've now proposed to amend the ordinance and reflect what's been presented to you tonight.
Alderman Simmons.
Alder President Sellers, please.
Okay. You answered my question. I was just wondering why was the change, and I was going to ask the question, you know, are people using it, you know, they're getting a place and then they're using that instead of trying to get the real license, they're just doing that, so.
And that's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
So we would need a motion then to move this forward to reading at the next council meeting.
So
Motion second and.
Second.
the vote.
Monroe and Sellers.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Monroe, seconded by Sellers. All in favor, move this to second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Just for clarification, this would be going on to the next council meeting for first reading.
Oh, my bad. All right, first reading. Okay, so now we have item 10, and that's discussion regarding ordinance amending Chapter 806, increasing festival district days from 12 to 18. Presented by Manager Boyer, and again with Mr. Tim Mahoney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In late 2020, the city adopted Section 806.22, allowing festival district events in the downtown business district. For the past 3 years, the district has enjoyed great success bringing much-needed foot traffic into our downtown establishments. Due to this success, the current limit of 12 events is insufficient to meet demand. The current schedule of events for the downtown business district, including Music on Chicago, Teddy Baker Days, Eats and Beats, is currently utilizing all the available dates allowed under Section 806.22. Additional events are being requested but cannot be coupled with the festival district designation due to the 12 event limit. Rather than limit the number of events bringing people into our downtown, the Liquor Commission is recommending an expansion of the dates from the current 12 to 18 to accommodate the increased demand. At our regular meeting of the Liquor Commission on December 14, 2023, the attached revisions of Chapter 806 approved for presentation to the City Council by unanimous vote. The proposed rules and fee structure are intended to be cost and revenue positive, as the festival district is specifically intended to bring in out-of-town guests, which increase hotel motel revenues and increases sales tax revenue from food, beverage, and retail goods in our downtown. And I'm recommending you move that on to the next council meeting for first reading.
Thank you again. So on behalf of the Liquor Commission, we just talked about try something and see how it goes. And this is one of those things that I think we all should be, at least I am, incredibly proud of. This was a big reach when we did this. When we came before the City Council and said, we want to set up a festival district where you can essentially have an open container of alcohol and move from one thing to another. Well, that was very outside of the norm for Freeport, Illinois, and an incredibly new idea. When we first came before this council, we suggested a large number of events that were possibilities, and the council resisted that, so we started out with 6. Those 6 went really well. I came back before you and asked to double that to 12. We didn't go right from 6 to 12, okay? We went from 6 to like 8, and then we went to 10, and then we went to 12. And if you do pass this, we're not gonna go from 12 to 18. We're gonna go from 12 to like 10. We're gonna crawl before we walk. In my opinion, and the opinion of the Liquor Commission, and I think a lot of other people, this festival district has worked out tremendously well with very, very, very few problems, if any problems. I don't think there's been any real challenges with this. Yes, I'll do that. The success that I really loved watching it is Tuddy Baker Days, this last year Tuddy Baker Days, which was a massive success. Had we not had the festival district, there would have been some type of beer sanctuary, right? There would have been some type of beer tent where everybody that wanted to have a drink would have to go into this tent. And normally, a lot of times, that wasn't necessarily a local vendor that was making the money off of that. That was some outside vendor, or it would only be one vendor who happened to get that contract. And then you had a separation in your crowd. Part of the crowd is in the tent, part of the crowd's not in the tent. That's not what we had with Tuddy Baker Days this year at all. And if you watch Tuddy Baker Days, you had a huge crowd, and people would go down to the various locally owned businesses, whether it was Mort's or whether it was Bill Green's place or wherever it was. They had to go through the apparatus in order to get their drink, but they would get their drink, and then they would come back to where the music was being played, Steve Cox's band, who did an incredible job that night, and then the fireworks, which we had some glitches with regards to that, but that wasn't the festival district's fault. It worked incredibly well, and those businesses thrived that evening. They sold out of everything. I mean, they had a great night. The food vendors that were there at Tuddy Baker Days were sold out early in the afternoon. It was an incredible success story, and I felt really proud to be part of that. I stood there and watched that whole thing, and I was like, wow, this works great. And I talked to the people who were involved in that. How does this work? How is this working out? This works fantastic. Talked to the various vendors. So I think it's been a huge success. We have demand. People want it to expand. There's a seeking out of more and more of firing up the festival district. So rather than coming before you every year and saying, okay, can we go from 12 to 13 to 14, we're here asking for another half dozen, go to 18. As I indicated to you, we're not going to go to 18 right away the first year. I think we're hoping to do 2 more, so it would be more like 14. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think this has just been something that we tried and has been a really great success.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, I have to agree. This is definitely one of the must-see events in Stevenson County in general. I honestly was shocked because it was better, in my opinion, than the fair. I know I'll probably get hate mail for that, but it was a great location, a lot of awesome businesses. It was well put together. It was well attended, and like you said, most everybody obeyed, and were well behaved, which is a good thing. But it gives you a place to take the family, and I think even having the alcohol where people were walking around with it, it doesn't present an issue. And I'm not a drinker at all, but I see the value in this. I see the opportunity for the businesses, and I think this is a positive thing. And I think the Liquor Commission, working with the Downtown Festival Group and everybody, GFP and others, I think that's a very positive thing for the community, because there were a lot of people there that I had no idea who they were. They were definitely from out of town, and to see people coming to Freeport and visiting downtown, I felt like that was the first time I felt in a long time where I really saw the vision of downtown starting to come back. Because when we were younger, us older guys, 18, 17, 16 years old, we used to all cruise downtown, and it was always packed Friday, Saturday nights. I know our chief of police will probably hate that, the retired one. But it's an amazing thing to see people coming back to Freeport for this type of event, and I'd love to see it again. So I think good work.
I totally agree with the fact that you say you can get these filled out. I noticed on your agenda for this week, you've got 8 to come through already out of the 12. I think it's phenomenal. I think it shows the amount of success you're having with more interest. these other people wouldn't want to have a festival if it was on the way down.
Right.
That the fact that they're knocking at your door saying, hey, we want a part of this too, shows the fact that it is very successful.
I agree.
Okay, no
With that, I would make a motion to move this to the first reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Shado, seconded by Parker. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Thank you, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Alderperson Simmons, can I say something outside of this particular thing that relates back to a prior agenda item? Is that okay?
Does that make him out of order, sir? Well, he ain't even part of the meetings. Can he do that?
As a lawyer, I'm always out of order, right? So this would just be normal, but I thought I'd ask before I start talking.
You want to go back and just general comment on a previous agenda item?
My name is on the list. Yes.
There is a public comment
Yeah,
section below.
You did sign up for 9 and 10. I just didn't call you because I figured you'd be talking. Sorry, that's my fault.
No, not at all.
Oh, so he was signed up for public comment?
I just didn't call him because I knew he was coming up. So that was my fault.
Oh, so this should have been public comment during the first public comment there, so it was inadvertently missed there. So you can either wait till the second public comment, or Madam Chair, if you want to let him do his public comment because he did sign up for it. For the first one, they were agenda items. He can have his 3 minutes now, I guess.
I don't want
It's
to
up
cause
to
a
you.
big stir. It'll be really quick.
That'll be a big stir. I don't care. You are up there.
Sounds good.
Is that a
I-
consensus?
Is that okay? I just wanted to indicate, you were asking about success stories with GFP. I'm one of those. So I was a tenant for a long time after the building next to my father's building collapsed and we lost our place to live. I was not interested in owning a building in downtown Freeport ever again after that experience, quite frankly, especially with my interactions with the city during all of that. But when the mayor came in and set forth kind of a new plan with regards to downtown, I changed my opinion on that. And 6 years ago, when I looked at what building am I going to do downtown, the person that really gave me the idea of how I could do this was Chris Schneiderman at the State Bank, my banker. But it's always nice to talk to somebody that doesn't make money when you say yes. And that's hard for me to find, right? Everybody makes money when I say yes. So I went to the GFP and spoke to the people here and talked to them about what I was getting into, because this was a whole TIF zone idea, which I had never done, and I had no knowledge with regards to that process. And it's a very wonderful process, but it's also kind of a leap of faith process when you decide to do it. You have to put a bunch of your own money in first and hope that it all works out. And if it doesn't, then you've got a problem. And GFP was very, very good at giving me the certainty that I needed with regards to what I was getting into in those processes. And it was very nice to be able to talk to somebody that had that knowledge, but also somebody that wasn't a vested interest in my outcome there. So I'm one of the success stories, and it's going to be 4 years this summer that I've been in that building, and that whole block now is redone and full, and there's other buildings down the street, and I'm super happy we did it. I love being there, and as Mr. Zito will tell you, I never make it to my Rockford office anymore because I like my Freeport office way too much. So I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to item 11, quarterly update on the city's goals established by Social Justice Committee. And this will be presented by Manager Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Social Justice Committee recommended measuring a number of metrics to assess the city's progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion within the city government. Hiring overview. In the fourth quarter of 2023, we continued to recruit for open positions across all departments. The police department is currently short of 8 officers. The fire department reports no firefighter openings. All other departments are currently short 12 employees. Department-specific DEI analysis. Police department, the female workforce represents 37.5% of the department's employees, and the minority workforce accounts for 15.6%. Both female and minority workforce numbers remained unchanged from quarter 3. However, there was a slight decline, 1%, in the female workforce due to the retirement of one female employee. Fire Department, there's been no change in the representation of female and minority employees. Female employees make up 6.5% of the workforce, consistent with Q3 numbers, while minority representation remains at 0. Our objective for both departments is to increase female and minority employment by 5% each year. Recruitment efforts include partnerships with community leaders, clergy, and advertisements across various media, including targeted Facebook ads. In other departments, minority employees increased by 2 from Q3. Female employees make up 41% of the workforce in the non-police and fire departments, a steady figure. The non-public safety minority workforce now comprises 13% of the employees, showing a 3% increase over third quarter. Overall, we have 59 females, 20 minority employees out of a total workforce of 187, equaling 31.5% female and 10.6% minority representation. Quarterly changes. Looking at our last quarter ending in December 31st, 2023, the following changes were observed, and you'll have to forgive me, this table is actually the total aggregate table, but I'm going to be going over the last quarter ending in 2023. The police department, we observed a decrease of 1 female position compared with the last quarter and an overall increase of 2 since December 31st, 2022. The fire department saw no change in female employment from both last quarter and the 2022 base year. Other departments experienced an increase of 2 female employees from last quarter and 4 from the 2022 base. Minority recruitment, police minority employment remained stable compared with last quarter and increased by 3 positions since the 2022 base. No change in minority employment was noted in the fire department compared with Q1 of 2023 and 2022 base. Outreach and inspections. No outreach opportunities were utilized during the fourth quarter of 2023. Our goal for nuisance and building inspections was 5% increase from the previous year. In 2023, community development accomplished 6,924 inspections, exceeding the goal of 6,100 by 824 inspections. That's a 13.5% increase. 4 buildings were demolished this quarter, including 3 houses and 1 accessory building. Changes in our boards and commissions resulted in female membership increasing slightly to 40% and minority membership decreasing to 11.4% from the 2022 base year. In 2023, the city successfully achieved and in many instances surpassed the Social Justice Committee's DEI objectives within the city government. As I mentioned before, the police department went beyond its annual target of 5% increase in the employment of minorities and women, realizing an overall 8% rise. This includes a significant 15% increase in minority employment. The fire department figures remain consistent with no notable changes from 2022 base. Other departments collectively exceeded their 5% annual increase target for minority and female employment, achieving 6% increase overall. In terms of staff engagement, the total of attracting 20 citizens to public events for increased civic participation was surpassed. This was successful, was evident at events like Teddy Baker Days and the Stevenson County Fair. Community development outperformed its objective 9% increase in inspections, conducting 13.5% more inspections than the 2022. Furthermore, community development significantly exceeded its annual target of demolishing 10 structures in blighted neighborhoods. This year they achieved a 340% increase, resulting in the removal of 34 structures. And I'd like to just go back to the table on page 2. And this is going back to 2020 to kind of chart our long-term changes. So in the police department, we've had an increase in 5 female employees. We've also increased the number of minority employees by 4, and total employment is relatively flat with a +1. The fire department, as I mentioned before, since 2020, we had hired 1 additional female employee since 2020, and we lost 1 minority employee as of 2020, with total employees at +3. All other departments, as mentioned, seeing some pretty significant changes there. Female employees, we had an addition of 7 female employees, the addition of 5 minority employees, with a total employee increase of 3. So overall, all departments, we had 13 new female employees, 8 minority employees, with a total employment increase of +7. So, any questions?
Alderperson Sellers.
Okay. Could you help me understand what the term of staff engagement and goals of attracting 20 citizens to public events for increased civic participation? What is that?
Originally, that was staff on the streets, so we would go out at a specific location, the city staff. We'd advertise the fact that we would be there, and then we would engage the residents that showed up to the event. The goal was approximately 20 engagements per activity. We made a change to set up a city engagement booth at the Stevenson County Fair and also Teddy Baker Days, where we had a significant amount of community engagement at those events. So I anticipate we'll be expanding that in 2024.
What that actually is instead of holding our own event, we attend events. So where people are already coming to.
I guess I'm not getting it.
Well, before we had the staff on the street. Had you ever attended a staff on the street? We would hold it in a specific location, put flyers out to the neighborhoods or wherever they were at, invite people to come from, I think it was 5 o'clock to 6:30. Salvation Army provided hot dogs. We were trying to get people out of their homes to come talk to us in that neighborhood. We didn't generally have too great of attendance, so we decided, well, that's not really working as well as we thought it should. So instead of creating our own event, we decided to attend events that were already created and then be a part that way. I think there were several hundred engagements during just those 2 events that you mentioned, several hundred versus, a goal of 20. So it was a far better way to reach people, talk with them, hear their concerns, address things that we need to. That better?
Yeah. I guess you're just having conversation out on the street.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You still have a question?
Thank you.
I do.
Okay, Alderperson Monroe.
City Manager Boyer, kind of looking at your marketing, how are we exactly marketing to specific minority classes?
We are engaging on Facebook and various other social media sites, the city website, and I believe we're reaching out to other groups within the city. To let them
Churches.
know.
Follow up. So I believe it was 2020 or 2021. My memory is failing me right now. Facebook made changes to their algorithms and made it more difficult to advertise to specific races or minorities or majorities. Do you think that's a wise use of our funds to go that route, or would it be more, better, more beneficial to target universities, historical black universities, those types of ways to go about getting more candidates who are qualified to kind of come to Freeport, to go along with our local advertising that we're doing?
Point taken. Thank you.
I have another question. I'd like to ask the question on the goals of the inspection. When you said it was a 5% increase, are we looking into, because don't you think that's a lot of inspection for one person? Or what does, are we looking to help with the inspections? Yes. Okay. And also with the inspections, and what was the other ones? What was the other one? Well, what else do? They do community development, the inspections, and what else is the other one? No, what else do the 2 guys do? Oh. Help me. Yes, thank you. Oh, I couldn't get that one. So did we have a number on, I know we're talking about inspections, do we have anything on the nuisance, and are we looking to provide help for them also?
That's affirmative. We budgeted this year for an additional nuisance inspector, and we'll be realigning the metrics based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Manager Boyer. We'll move on to item 12, discussion regarding resolution approving 3-year street plan. This will be presented by Darren Stico from, oh, am I saying it right? Stico from Fairground.
Oh, wow.
Bringing us blueprints.
Okay. This is the streets.
Thank you.
I got too much out here. Thank you. Ready? Got names. It's your word. Instead of just
Appreciate your time tonight to talk about one of our favorite subjects, City of Freeport streets, in the last year. I would like to clarify that we're just having a discussion tonight about the 3-year street plan study. We're not asking for a decision. We're not asking for a resolution. We're just wanting to have a discussion, a healthy discussion to move this forward. I'll try to be brief in my comments, and I'll pause after, I've got 5 different areas here, and then we'll take comments at those times just to try to respect everybody's time. The real objective of this meeting is to start a preliminary plan for 2025 to 2028 and hope that we can come to a common goal for a 3-year street plan. My objective is to create buy-in from the council and our constituents to come up with a permanent plan of fixing roads, and we have to start somewhere. Everybody in this room knows that we could put a city map on the wall and throw a dart and hit a street that would need to be repaired. So we know that factually they're in disarray. We know that it's not concentrated to one ward or one area. And our intent is to start a program that we can all agree upon to try to make some headway. Just some quick calculations. I've reviewed these before, so some of this is repeat information, but I think it's worth bearing. If we were to fully reconstruct every street in town, water, sewer, curbs, storms, ramps, and sewer, we'd be looking at about $1.3 billion in today's money, which is something that is nearly not affordable for the residents of Freeport. That would divide out to $52 million per year. And since we can't afford that as a community, I really don't think it bears discussing what the total amount is. We've got to start somewhere, and we know that that is a program that the residents and the city of Freeport cannot afford. We'd like to create a plan that will outlive the current council, the current mayor, the current staff, the current engineer, something that can move this city forward in a productive manner that doesn't and is not influenced by seat changes or alderperson changes or even staff changes, because every time we get a new mayor, council, city manager, there's new directions to the way we want to address streets. And it's ultimately because we've never really had a solid road program that moved the city forward in one direction commonly. One of the biggest decisions that this council will face is how to decide to pay for future street improvements to make this progress. Currently, as a reminder, the city receives between $850,000 and $1 million per year in funding. IDOT funding, MFT funding has a lot of rules to be spent, and it's very specific in the type of work that can be spent on. Local funding that we would create as a city government would be less expensive. We'd have more control. You could actually spend less money on engineering and outside dollars, and more money would go into the roadways. So that's something that most communities don't realize is that when IDOT or outside funding says you can have this money to use on roads, they demand so much that goes with it, very little of that money ends up going into the roads. It's a true formula that has issues. Other items that we have to discuss and address as we go from street to street are ADA ramps. We talked about the transition plan last week. We have to start making decisions on if we're replacing curbs or we're overlaying them, as has been done in the past. Curbs, sidewalks, ADA ramps are eating up the majority of our street money as we do these projects. ADA ramps is something we don't have a choice with as a community and will need to be addressed as we do the projects. Starting in 2025, the city will be down to $1 million in the MFT account. We get $1 million annually, but we will have spent all of our reserve money that we've had. We will have spent all of our road bond money, which I believe is gone now, and we will fiscally be looking at just $1 million, which the city street crews paved more than $1 million alone this year in work. That's just pavement and mix. That has nothing to do with any of these outside areas. We've discussed doing a citywide comprehensive road study again. That cost would be approximately $100,000, and that would include the ADA ramp transitions that need to be done. Fairgraham and our crews are willing to do that again, if that is the decision of the council. Again, ADA transition plan is mandatory in 2024 to retain MFT funding for a community of our size. And the transition plan has to come up with a model that will replace our ADA ramps in a 25-year span. That's the ultimate. Currently, this is an estimate, just based on educated estimate, we have probably less than 15% of our ramps that are code compliant currently to ADA standards in 2024. Road assistance is something that was addressed with IDOT. IDOT has informed us that the current formula for MFT funding is not adequate for communities of our size. They know it. They've confirmed it. They did, talk about areas like Rockford, Cherryvale, McChesney Park, Lena, and other communities in our area that have instituted sales tax or other types of fundings to help spur their road program, and they use them as the model childs on how to get ahead. This is your decision ultimately on how we create this funding. I had Ms. Gallagher run some numbers for us. In 2023, a 1% increase would be $3.5 million. A 3/4% would be $2.6 million. And that would actually put our sales tax level with the other communities in the surrounding area. Talking with City Manager Boyer, excuse me. I'm in favor of looking at a 3/4% and then still getting to 1%, but looking at city budget items to try to make up that delta gap to still try to get a full 1% funding towards the roads moving forward along with our MFT project. That number and that money would give us a lot of flexibility in the community to get that money into the streets with a lot more local funding. It would not all be able to be driven by city crews. We don't have that many crew people, so we would be looking at splitting projects between contractor-led and bid projects and then city projects as well. I'd just like to remind everybody too that we're kind of at the perfect storm right now in Freeport. We have a lot of water main that's in the ground right now that is in very poor condition. We're having breaks. As a reminder, 1950 to 1975 spun cast pipe is creating 90% of our issues right now. We've probably had close to a dozen water main breaks in the last 2 weeks. And we've made it a practice in Freeport so far in the last, say, 7 to 8 years that we're not going to pave streets unless we feel like the water main quality is good, or we're going to be able to replace that during the project, because what ends up happening is 2 months after we're done, we get a break and our new investment is ruined. Can we guarantee that will never happen again? No, but we have sat down with utility maps and we're trying to make educated guesses on areas that the main might be good. For instance, on Center Street that we paved hoping to not have issues in the future because we didn't have the funding to replace the main. I'd like to define street work, so we're kind of talking about real apples and oranges here. Contractor work versus city-led work. So the city crews are able to do mill and overlays. They're quite qualified, but we don't have a big enough crew to do total reconstructs. And when I talk about overlays, there's different kinds of overlays, and I'm gonna pick some sections for you. So the Greenfield, I'm gonna pick Greenfield Avenue on the west side of town. That's a traditional mill and overlay. There is no brick under the street, there's no concrete under the street. We mill off the pavement, we're down to gravel base. We can fix that, we can pave it. That's a quick project for us, as people saw this summer. And the water main quality in that area is some of the newer in town, so we don't have water main issues in that town. Center Street was a great example this year of a street that has brick underneath of it. Many of our east side streets, east side of town, when I talk east of 26 or east of Locust Street, have brick and or concrete base under the streets, and the concrete is failing. Most of those streets have been overlaid at least one time, if not 2 or 3 times in the last, say, 20, 30 years. So those are projects that Fair Graham and or anybody sitting in this room or working for the city made no decisions on. Those decisions of overlays were done years ago. And any street that you can drive around and you see about this much a curb left sticking up means that it's been overlaid at least twice. Okay? And so we as a community need to decide, based on some questions that I got last week, are we going to replace curbs in every part of town as we do these streets? Brick streets were overlaid many years ago and they've been ground. So the curb that's underneath them is no longer good if we don't overlay it again, which means we would have to totally replace that. We did not do that model on Center Street due to the extreme cost. That is going to be our most expensive segment to replace if we have to do curb everywhere. So I want to educate a little bit. Anywhere there's brick or concrete, there's sand under the street. The concrete or brick will be about 4 inches, and we'll have about a ½ inch of sand, and then we're on dirt. So there is no road base once we take that out. Anywhere we remove the road base, we have to go at least 20 to 24 inches down in depth to remove all the soil and build a rock base up for the road, or it will fail again. And so that's where we start turning into some very expensive segments. In 2023, curb was in 2023, curb was $75 a linear foot for replacement. When we do road reconstructions, if we touch the curb in most areas, we also have to pay for a new driveway approach because the angles will not be the same. And we also likely have to replace the sidewalk through the driveway sections because they're not ADA compliant. So those become very, very expensive programs. In the past management, not the current management, had decided we were not going to rip out every curb in town and that we were going to mill them off and overlay them because quite frankly, the city does not have the money to address every curb in town that has been overlaid at this time. Now, if you guys choose to change that decision, I'm more than happy to fix anything in this town that needs to be fixed. I'm more than happy to direct any of that as long as we can have the funding to deal with it. But it is a serious complication. Any streets that have brick or concrete under them will at least double the cost to repair those streets. And as a reminder, we won't have a choice, but we will have to do the ADA ramps on those streets no matter what. So I just wanted to give you some ideas of that. A full reconstruct like we're doing on Adams Avenue, that's everything. Water, sewer, storm, sanitary, curbs, sidewalk, ADA ramps. About $1,800 a linear foot to do that street, or $10 million for the area that we're doing. A normal, I'm gonna call it normal, overlay and reconstruct alone is about $825 a linear foot per street. And a mill and overlay that the city does, that you saw us do on, say, Chicago Avenue this year, that's about $165 a linear foot, depending on the width of the street. And if we had a contractor do it, it'd be about $245 a linear foot to do. So those are some real solid cost comparisons on what we're talking about with real street work in this town. What we're gonna find out is anytime we touch curbs, we're gonna end up touching driveways if driveways are attached to them. Most of the driveways won't be compliant, and the sidewalks that go through the throat of the driveways on an angle will not be code compliant either. So once we open that can of worms, that becomes a city cost. Per our ordinances in Freeport, driveways and ingress and egress out of those driveways is the homeowner's responsibility, as well as the sidewalk in front of their property. But when we do true reconstructs, that becomes a city cost because we can't expect everybody in that area to be able to afford to replace every driveway and every sidewalk to become code compliant. And we get a lot of questions about that. So areas that we do total restorations on with new curb, we end up having to fix the driveway segments and the ADA corners. On items that we don't do the curbs, we don't fix the driveway because it's the homeowner's responsibility, not the city's. That's a question that we ran into multiple times from this last season. I also remind you that while I don't believe ADA ramps are $20,000 a piece to replace, that is the number that IDOT is recommending that we estimate per ramp. I believe on Oak Street alone for next year's project, I believe I counted 22 ramps that need to be replaced on that street alone in order to spend money there. So I'd like to just do a quick review of what we have planned in 2024 that's already been budgeted for on this cycle. It's $3 million of work with another $500,000 from the county. So in this year's project, we intend to do Chicago Avenue from Galena to Jackson. We intend to do Iroquois from Galena to Kenwood. We intend to address the Viaduct roadway over at Shawnee and Arcade. We intend to do Oak Street from Galena to Fairview, I believe it is. It should be south, excuse me, Galena to south. Dirk Street, we intend to do from Meadows to Field Circle. We intend to do Quail Ridge Drive from Greenfield Drive to Greenfield Drive, it's a loop. Ridge Street from Park Boulevard to Wood Street. Sioux Drive from Greenfield to the cul-de-sac. Yellowstone Court from Greenfield to the cul-de-sac. And then on the county project that with their memorandum of understanding for those funds, the targeted project so far, hasn't been finalized, is Locust Street from south to Lincoln as an overlay. That's all we'd be able to afford is just an overlay. Some people would like to know why some of these cul-de-sacs are on the projects. These cul-de-sacs, and I believe James has one on his that we redid. That was chosen by our street staff because we're at a point that we cannot plow these areas without plowing up all the pavement on the streets and the cul-de-sac. The garbage trucks has ruined these areas, and there is no physical way. I challenge anybody to go down Yellowstone, Sioux, or, sorry, James, I don't know the one you live on at all, Santa Fe, I think, but Cortez. There was no pavement left in those sections. They're really bad, and the plow trucks are just going to blow them up this season, and there won't be anything left. So that is why those were chosen. That list of work will be $3.5 million. That's the estimate for that. So it doesn't sound like a lot. Additionally, we have Bradmar Drive and Town Drive, which is $800,000. We have Pearl City Road with the RBI money that's remaining for $1.3 million. And we have Adams Avenue, total reconstruct. We've spent about $2 million, so we got $8 million left on that project yet next year. So it still will be a very robust season of work that needs to be done. But a reminder, this is the last year the city of Freeport is moving forward with project work for streets without more funding. Next year with $1 million, the city will be able to do some minor mill and overlays. That's it. And that doesn't include any of the grinding that we have to contract out. We don't have a grinder, and it's not something that we can do. Walnut Avenue has been kind of named as the city's #1 priority that I know of so far. It's a disaster. We all know it. It's a very heavily traveled thoroughway. We did an original cost estimate about a year ago, at about $8 million to fix that corridor. I've had phone conferences with IDOT, and that street, they are going to make it, when we upgrade it, if we use their funding, It'll likely be 10 million. We will have to try to buy the corners of Walnut and Empire to straighten that road out. It's a safety concern, has been for many years. It's going to be a very expensive project based on the average daily traffic demand and the amount of students that cross that section every day. Currently, the city has a special account, special transportation account, for what they call FAU routes. We have nearly $3 million saved in this account, and we can only use it on certain streets in town. Walnut is one of those streets. If that's $3 million now, we get approximately $400,000 a year in that account. They're called federal STU funds. If we use those funds to rehab that street, we will end up having to do a full reconstruct at federal standards. Federal standards are even more strict than IDOT standards, so a lot more will come into play. We will end up buying more houses. The intersections, many intersections through there are not to code radiuses, so we'll have to open those radiuses up. That project could get very expensive to use federal funding and not local funding on it. So it's just a reminder. The federal process takes 3 years to do design. 3 years, probably about $800,000 to design that section. The ESR, which is an environmental study report, takes 2 years to pull off for a federal project. So that's something that we would need to be moving forward with in the first half of 2024 here, if we expect to even construct that come 2027. I would expect that the entire corridor would need ComEd, Frontier, and NICOR relocates in order to reconstruct that section as well. And again, I've already stated the corner of Empire and Walnut has been deemed somewhat unsafe for the amount of traffic that goes through there due to the offset. So that is going to be a requirement from the feds if we do go that way. So back to the objective here. I gave you all maps and a list, and I want this to be your program, not my program, not Rob's program, not the streets program, although they will all have input. I'm asking each one of the wards, including Joy, who's the alderman at large, I've given you a map of streets that have been done in the last 5 years, because that's about the primary time in the last 10 years I've been working for the city that we've done street work. Every one of those streets that we have done is highlighted there. The 2024 list is highlighted as well, so you can see what's been done, or what's hopefully going to be done this year. I would like you to pick streets in your ward that you believe are your priorities and your constituents' priorities, and get me that list. I am asking you to prioritize them, 1 being your most important in your ward, and 5 being your least important. I'm going to attempt to build our road program off of that list. And what I will do is my team will evaluate every one of those streets, water, sewer, storm, ramps, curb, pavement conditions, and we will actually try to attempt to do some cores on those streets to find out what's underneath so we can come up with a closer cost on a 3-year plan of what the city can potentially pull off, and then we'll build from that. So that's going to require input from every person in your ward, letting you know what the priorities are. I'm asking you guys to select them because you know more about your ward than I do. You know more what your constituents want than I do, and we can't fix every road in every ward. That's just not going to be a reality. The one item that we're really going to have to make a decision on and discuss is the city council's priorities on whether we're going to pave over troubled water main here in the future. We can continue to chase EPA loans to remove and replace this, but that has to be user rate driven. We have a lot of water main in this town. I want to tell you that the list of things that you see on these maps that have been paved in the recent years, we have cherry picked mains that we know that are pretty good. They're plastic, or we don't have a huge break history on it. We're starting to run out of those items that we don't have to address. And so, water main's very expensive to replace. We just need to figure it out together, and I'm asking everybody to come together as a group to help figure this situation out, because we can't continue to go on with the status quo. And I think a lot of people in this town are going to be very disappointed if all of the street work dries up. With that, I'll take questions.
Alderperson Sellers.
Yes. I do like what you're talking about. I do understand. I mean, I don't understand all of it, but you know. But just wondering, I know we had talked about, for instance, Dewey.
Yep.
And you had said we can't work on there until what's done?
Lead service line, Dewey specifically has 25 lead services left to be done on it. That's another thing that I would cross-reference with your list. We have addressed a lot of lead services in town, and we're making headway, and package 3 is nearly approved by EPA to start constructions this spring again. We will not move forward any street in 2025 or 6 or 7, whatever, 8 that would have lead services left. But by helping me with this list will help me prioritize the next package of where we need to go and where we need to get going on it. Right now, Alex is here with me tonight. Alex has been one of our main guys on lead service line replacements. He's helped me figure out the packages. He's helped us guide the specs. He's done a fantastic job for the city, making sure we're getting our value of money. But unless we have a road program that says where we're going, I don't know where to send them. And so we're just randomly picking sections of town, trying to get them cleaned up in groups as we can go. And we concentrated on the 3rd and the 5th ward because that was our highest number of service replacements that we had in the city. And then Ward 7, we haven't done a lot in, but we're moving that direction. Honestly, we have about 3 more packages of lead service line replacements, and we should be nearing the end. We've made great strides as a community, much larger strides than any other community I know of in Illinois, for sure. Rockford's making great strides too, but they have a much, much larger number than we do for replacement. And I want to remind everybody, lead service line replacements is something we can all be very proud of. To date, we have not spent 1 nickel of this community's money on lead service line replacements. Phase 3, we will be spending about $200,000, but in return, we have got $9 million of free money. And we're on tap to get 3 more rounds of $3 million to finish the program out. So that's something that we can be very proud of. There's not a lot of communities that can say that we've been able to help our constituents figure this out. So.
Oh, I got another question. I also would like to know, on some of the streets that you have, you know, we have, like, I'll just use Float Street.
Yep.
You did half of that, and now you're doing the Adams. Are you going to continue some of the streets that you started? Are we going to finish those streets?
So currently, the streets that are highlighted on your map is all that is planned to be done. Some of those streets, like Float, we did half and half. We split it between 2 years because of the city funding that we had to do it at that time. Right now, we have none of those situations other than Adams will be fully improved by the end of next year, from Float Street all the way to Arcade. That will be a whole reconstruct from end to end, and then the part going north from Float will just be a water main patch like we're doing in the other areas. That's not a reconstruct. The city couldn't afford to take it further than that, and that pavement condition going to the north towards downtown was the better part of the pavement condition at the time. So what we're hoping, at some point, the rest of Adams down to, let's say, Main Street could be mill and overlaid because the pavement wasn't nearly as alligator cracked in that section as it was in the section going south.
Okay, I have another question. You know what? I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, go ahead. Just lost what I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderperson Shadle.
I spent a little time Saturday driving around. I got a list of 20. And I've got a couple that, there's one section of Pleasant Street that is legitimately a 5-mile-an-hour street. There's nowhere to drive around the potholes. You gotta suck it up and hit them.
Yep.
And
So I
you
will-
better not be doing more than 5.
So I will tell you, just off my basic knowledge of the street, Pleasant Street, I know is a mess, but it needs full water main replacement. There's heavy breaks on the street. And so if we step back a quick second, we talked about road ratings. Pleasant, back when we did the last study, had a road rating of like 50. So that's, once you reach below 60 on a road rating, the city should not spend a nickel on that street moving forward because it needs a reconstruct at that point. Any dollars that we put on that street, we're gonna throw away. I was just, Cece and Joy, excuse me, asked me to look at South Benton. Same exact story over there. That, you couldn't drive on the street without hitting a pothole. It's in horrific shape.
I drove that later summer. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't drive down the street without hitting something that's been patched or a pothole. Totally agree with it. That's a full reconstruct. You can see 90% of the street, that's an exaggeration, 40% of the street has brick showing. So there's brick underneath. The bricks are moving, and it was only overlaid at about 2 inches. So it was never made to survive.
Yeah. I guess my point with that is the fact that I'm agreeing with you. That we need to figure out how we're gonna fund this. I drove it, like I say, I spent about an hour Saturday. I got 20 streets, and I picked ones that were, in my opinion, needing to be repaved. I wasn't just pulling streets out, ooh, let's add this one, add that one. These are streets that need to be repaved. Some, like I say, way worse than others. And out of what's projected for 2024, there is one street off of my list on next year's target list.
Yep.
We got to come up with some money. Got to come up with some money.
My real point of this is, this isn't something that we can put $1 million at and is going away. This is a problem that is going to burden every single person in this room as long as we live in Freeport. There is no buying our way out of the road issues. So we need to make progress. It's not, again, I sound like a broken record. Nobody in this building created this issue, but we need to deal with it, and we need it's the less popular vote, but we need something that can move forward. If I were to leave, if Greg was to leave, if Rob was to leave, if Jody, any of us would leave, this would continue on as a future plan that didn't matter who was sitting here that we can build on. And that is the real struggle in most communities, is we haven't made that plan. We don't know how we're gonna fund it. And I would totally suggest, if you decide to move this forward, lock the funds down for the roads. Lock them down. You have the ability to ordinance them so they only go into the roads or whatever it takes to build the roads. You have that option. We did that before with the CIP funds, but it got changed because, a different council sat and people wanted to move things around because we had to. You have the ability to make whatever funding comes in be for roads. It's a priority for almost virtually everybody sitting at this table has talked to me, or when they came said roads was their priority. Well, let's make it our priority.
I just have another Alderman. All right. Just like to know, have we looked at what type of grants were really out there to help us?
Yep.
Okay.
Constantly looking for grants. The sad truth is, for a community of our size, the only option that we've really had that has worked is coupling it into water main projects with EPA to try to get as much pavement covered as possible. There is no local funding for roads. The Biden administration and all this free money that they talk about all the time is for interstates, big roadways. We don't have anything that carries that much traffic in town that would be able to be vetted for that. We went to IDOT, we begged them for more work in our town. IDOT owns West Street, South Street, Galena, Route 75. The only project they have planned in Freeport in the next 5 years is the repaving of Galena, as we've talked from Park to Clark. That is it. That is the only project they have. We begged them to come take care of some issues on South Street. South Street's very poor. They came in and ground the street. That's all they'll do. It's an unmarked state route, and they have no funding to repair it. And they made us an offer of $1 million to take the entire corridor as a city street. That wouldn't even pay for the pavement in the first section. So it's not a good offer. So, like I said, I'm willing, my team's willing, everybody that I know who works with the city, we're here to resolve these situations. Doesn't matter what area of town we work in, we don't care. We just want to fix the problems. We can't do it without funding.
I want to agree with what Alderman Shadle, because that's what I ran on. I ran on mainly getting our infrastructure and our streets. When I do have guests come to town, it's not that I'm ashamed that they're riding in here, and then I have to hear them talk about how raggedy I got tired of hearing that. Then, I also ran on a safe community. I ran on, getting our landlords and our buildings straight. So I am agreeing with, we have to do something, and we can keep on going round and round for this administration, that administration, this. I'm ready to see something, a plan in place so that we can start. I mean, that's just like you got a little tiny leak in your roof, but you keep going on vacation every year instead of spending money to get the roof done. Now, your roof done caved in. I'm ready to put something together that we know that is a solid plan, that we can get our infrastructure back strong to where we can build our community up. That's my goal, and I
So, little explanation. The reason I picked a 3-year plan is most terms are 4 years, right? So we wouldn't have a lot of people coming in and out if we've got this approved. And then if we do a 3-year plan, in the second year, we'd already be setting up the next plan. So hopefully we'll make enough progress and people would be happy enough with what we're doing. That's the momentum that Rockford got. And I did do some research, and this is how Rockford started their program. They got input from their alder people on how to move it forward and what they wanted done. I've listened. I've been at almost every meeting, and you guys have said that you want to be involved. So I'm asking you to be actively involved, getting us a list of the priorities. Again, we're not going to be able to do every street on every list. There may be other priorities that come up, but at the end of the day, my process would be all of you sitting at this table will agree and vote on what will move forward, and then we'll make it happen.
Alderperson Monroe.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think we do owe the city a lot of credit for what they've done on the lead service lines. It's been an amazing process that we've gotten as far as we have in the short amount of time. And really, the improvements in some of the major thoroughfares has been astronomically, it's not even the right word, incredibly done. The fact that we've gotten as far as we have is great, and I think we are ready to take that next step and to figure it out. But, it's going to take tightening the belt amongst this team for the city, as well as finding other means. And I think that's, when you talk about the GFP and how they fit into our plan, we have to drive bringing new sources of revenue to the city. That's the only way we're going to be able to do it, because a 3/4 or 1% is not even going to be, we're barely scratching the surface. So we have to work together as a team. We have to figure out the next steps and figure that out. And until you brought up the bricks, I didn't realize how many streets. You drive to East Empire, there's bricks. You drive on, it's like bricks everywhere. And until you start looking in the potholes, I just tried to dodge them before. Yeah. You didn't realize how many there were and how much there was to do with it and how much effort it took to get them done. And the fact that there's no base under that highlights that, it's just not going to get better. So having that long-term plan is a positive.
Another interesting fact that Freeport has uniquely is, I'm sure most of you have drove on Carroll Street. Most of you have drove on Stevenson Street, the rippled pavement at the intersections. Those are old rail trolleys that are buried 2 feet under the pavement, and they're degrading and rotting, and that's what creates the rippling of the streets. So when we go back to fix those streets, guess what we have to do? We have to remove the trolleys because they've fully degraded and they're rotten. And we found them on Empire Street in the section that was so failed when we did it, down by Float.
Yep.
this season. So, any other questions?
One more, Alderman. I know you had talked about doing curbs and sidewalks or, a lot, and it costs a lot, but the little bit that I've seen on Adams of the new sidewalks and the new curbs, it's really nice. And me personally, I would like to see how, what our constituents are willing to say, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right, and get people curbs and get people sidewalks. I'd rather have something that looks really good and that's inviting to other people that want to come into our community versus we doing a half-ass job.
Right. So,
But, let's do it. If we're gonna do it, let's do it
yeah,
right.
and I'm glad to address that. So we're happy to pull that kind of project off you want, but I will tell you, Joy, and I'm being honest as the day is long, this number here will not be adequate to move curb forward at $75 a foot. It won't. And I don't want to sell anybody down the wrong road because it's not just the curb, it's then the driveway and that. But I don't disagree with you. And we're for fixing whatever we have the money to fix. Our latest instructions have been trying to stretch our dollars as far as possible to try to get as much roadway done as possible. And I believe I added this up for Rob or for a IDOT number, but I believe the number is 11 and a half miles that we've done in the last, I believe it was 3 years, which is pretty incredible considering we have 139 miles.
Alderperson Stacy.
So where does the brick stop? Float Street didn't get curbs because of brick. Center didn't get curbs because of brick. So it's like our neighborhoods are still singled out and not appearing whole. So where does the brick stop?
So the best, I can't educate on every street in town, but I think if you took Locust Street, north and south, primarily most of the streets east of Locust have brick or concrete underneath of them.
So anything west of West Street is good.
Well, I couldn't say that all of them are, but if you can see exposed flag of curb, they don't have bricks under them. If you can't see the flag of the curb, so the base flag of the curb, they likely have bricks, and that's why they've been overlaid. You have to remember the east of Locust Street is our oldest area of town, and 160 years ago it was decided to overlay those streets, and we've dug quite a few of them up, but it is, they are brick. They're actually Paddington pavers that are under there.
Mr. Shadle had a question.
I just want to mention the one that sticks out in my head is Burchard Street from Lincoln to American. Sticks in my head because there was a gentleman there that was quite upset that when we did that street, we did not do curbs on that. Well west of West Street.
So,
but the reason that they were not done on that street was dollar signs. It didn't have anything to do with location.
That is correct.
Or anything. It was strictly, let's get the road done, that's all we got money for.
So just to educate, the last city engineer made a educated choice to not spend money on curbs when we have so many roadways to repair because it will eat up so many of the dollars. So that was a decision that they made prior to leaving, and that's when the road program kind of started, and you saw that they didn't do it. The only exception to that rule was Empire Street, and that's because the curb changed on that street. We actually narrowed the street, and we moved the curb in a couple feet. So the curb on the South Strata Street got moved in a couple feet to narrow it to slow the street down, and that is why that curb was replaced. But we have not done any major curb work outside of, so the Float Street was one of the streets that they made the choice on not to do the curb at that time, because that was an overlay before. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank for other streets at the moment, but I do recall Float. And I'll grant you, it needs curb, but you also have an area afloat there that a lot of people park in their front yards. And so at the time, they thought, why are we gonna put curb on if people are gonna park on top of it, which they do. And if you drive through the section now, you'll see many of the homeowners that park in their front yards. Again, I'm happy to put the curb in if we can afford to put it in. It's not a decision whether I want to put it in or not. It looks nice. It's pretty, but can we afford to do it? Can we afford to hog the bricks out? I don't know if I said that. We cannot grind up a brick street. Bricks do not grind up. They're clay, so they slurry and they make like a mud. So what we end up having to do is grind off the top, and then we have to take in large machines and actually scoop it all out and haul it all out as clean fill. And that's why it's so expensive.
Alderperson Stacy.
Before last week when I spoke with you, I never heard anything about bricks. And so, if indeed it's bricks that's preventing those streets, Center Street, Float Street, whatever other street, from having curb, it's communication. Just be forward and upfront, forthcoming with the fact that this is gonna be an issue. I think it's the unknown that when something don't happen.
Yeah.
And then the people are left wondering why.
Yep. And I can totally